Gentlemen, welcome. Hope you had a great lunch. We'll have a slightly unconventional panel today, because in addition to our panel discussion, we'll be revealing some very exciting results of a survey that we've, as a Wizards Hospitality, undertaken among 60 very senior hospitality experts, including hotel operators, investors, owners, and independent consultants. So that will bring a little bit of intrigue into our discussion to keep you awake after lunch. And so we'll kick off with an interesting topic of market, where we're investing in luxury, and this a little bit of international review in regional. And so the question is this true that the hospitality investment, the hotel investment, is as good as its local market? Because in the hospitality investment, the systematic market-driven component has a major impact compared to so-called unsystematic asset-specific component. And when we're saying about market-driven factors, those are factors that are beyond control of owner-operator. So this is a little bit of managing expectations of the owner in terms of performance of the hotel. And those factors are, for instance, availability of human resources, the labor cost, the import costs, the import duties, and availability of local supply, which is of appropriate quality that you need to comply with your standards. This is taxation, this is visa regime, especially for your key source markets. So all of these factors that are beyond control of the owner and operator. And so basically, no matter how good you are at running the property, if the market fundamentals are not there, in the end of the day, the question is, do you think that the property will be struggling and will be performing in a way that maybe it's not the way it would be in a mature market or market with upward trend? And so basically, over to you, Kieran. Would you like to start?
Sure, I'd be delighted. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here, and I trust everyone enjoyed their lunch. I think between luxury all the way to economy, it is all about location, and especially when it comes to luxury, the construction costs, the training of the people that are working in that market. There's a lot of fundamentals that need to be in line in order to develop a luxury hotel. So certainly I do believe that it is market driven. For us as a company, Hilton, especially with our Waldorf Astoria brand, we're very focused in terms of strategy in launching Waldorf into key destinations. So that's world-class resort locations such as Bali, Maldives, Seychelles, Fiji, Phuket. And then when we look at city properties, it's really gateway cities, international access, capital cities, and we would only really be targeting AAA locations in these markets. We have had a couple examples, I would say, of maybe off locations, but in key markets. So I would say Koh Samui is a good example. We opened a Conrad there. So the airport and majority of the resorts are on the top of the island in the north, but we opened right in the south where there's no international player. And it did take us a little while to ramp up. However, it was a good case study because in the end, we were one of the market leaders in terms of RevPAR in that market. And I think another example is the Conrad in the Maldives. It was the first, I would say, long-distance resort from an international branded property. And originally, we used to have to transfer our guests via helicopter. And now with the seaplane access, that's really developed. But that property for the last 25 years has been extremely successful in the market and has been part of a lot of innovations in terms of construction and design. But for the Waldorf strategy, it's key locations in AAA locations.
Yeah. So market fundamentals do matter.
Correct.
But if there's a vision and you see that the market will develop, then it's something that look forward to in terms of case study, right?
Exactly.
And invest. Rosewood, Noel, what about you?
We have a slightly different perspective on that, I think, in all due respect. The first Rosewood Hotel opened 40 years ago, next year, in Dallas, Texas, a place that really was certainly not, at the time, a gateway city. Also had issues with, I'm from Texas, so I could say that, with talent and refinement. It was not a place for a luxury hotel, but that hotel far exceeded anything that was available in the United States, in New York or San Francisco. Became the most high-profile luxury hotel transformed the luxury market in the US out of a place that no one would have expected. And so ever since then, we've had a few more examples of cases where we've taken a different look at markets and different look at opportunities. With luxury, if you're talking about costs or getting material or getting talent, the luxury of luxury, and particularly where we're positioned in the luxury segment, which is really the top end of it, money can get you anything. So our average rate for resorts is about $1,200 US. So where there are obstacles to getting products or to getting talent or onerous taxes or so forth, if we find the right partner, the right location, we do the right product, there's enough there to cover those costs. So we really, it's not just looking at the market and the location, but we really want to know a bit more. We want to know what is, the mix of business. The more leisure-driven you are, that leisure customer will pay more. If you're purely looking at corporate markets, you have to be a little bit more focused on really, top locations. But more of a leisure mix gives you a bit more latitude to do different things and be a bit more unconventional. And that luxury customer, our customer, really is looking to go places they haven't been before. So when we're particularly looking at resorts, we're looking at that next destination. And with luxury customers and the right luxury brand and the right promotion around a new hotel, the right brand could put a new market on the map because the affluent traveler's been everywhere. They want to find that next thing.
Yeah, you're creating a destination, basically. Paul, from a distributor's perspective, if you look at Indonesia and Bali in particular, and then you obviously see all other markets where the money go, right? What would you say are the major competitors of Bali, for instance, in Asia? What are those markets?
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Actually, great to be anywhere. Good question. I think ultimately, when you're talking about luxury, and from conception all the way through to delivery, is that in essence, a luxury hotel, and I think Michael Isenberg talked about it this morning, is selling an experience. So whilst you're building a property, but you're actually really developing an experience. And from our side of the fence, when we're talking to customers, we've been able to articulate what the experience is all about. And in essence, the location where the hotel's located becomes secondary to the experience at the hotel. So how you then articulate that value proposition of the product to the consumer is really important. So it's the merchandising of the brand and the experience that will engage the customer. So you can actually drive new business into hotels by understanding what the value proposition is and merchandising it correctly. Now for Bali, obviously from my neck of the woods out of Australia, it's a very easy, accessible destination to get to. There's quite a diverse range of product here through, right across from Seminyak, Jimbaran Bay, Nusa Dua, Uluwatu, and then up to Ubud. So there's a range of product and a range of differential experiences that you can articulate there. So when you look at what the comp set is for Bali, then you look at what are the new destinations coming along from out. So Vietnam is becoming a massive leisure destination. The developments are going into Nha Trang, Da Nang, those areas, and even closer into Ho Tram, closer to Ho Chi Minh. Phu Quoc is now developing a lot of new infrastructure in there as well. And in 5 to 10 years' time, that's going to be a really interesting destination for people looking for something different outside what they've traditionally done. So I think ultimately, if you're going to invest in luxury, understand what you're investing in. So whether it's brand standard or whether it's the experience, how is the end consumer going to engage with that? And that's really what we do.
Yeah. Alex, you've been in Indonesia for a while now, but you also have huge international experience. So when you compare your, international wealth, international experience, what is your view in terms of how easy it is to do business in Indonesia?
Well, maybe just, can everyone hear me okay? Yep. Maybe just backtracking on that, I think having the opportunity to have worked for an international brand like Hyatt and having opened 8 hotels with...
There's no mic.
No good? Yeah, having the opportunity to open so many hotels with both a global brand such as Hyatt and then an independent brand like Trans, when you talk about luxury, there's so many fundamentals that can be varied. For example, I'll just give you some very quick examples, right? Osaka. Osaka, we opened a 500-room Hyatt Regency in an area that was meant to be developed very high-end in terms of infrastructure with the Universal Studios and corporate companies. Now, that didn't happen, and so when you had all those fundamentals correct, you had the product, you had the brand name, you potentially had the market, the economy was strong, but the infrastructure didn't quite develop. The Universal Studios didn't really happen, so that hotel struggled for a number of years, and then to top it off, an earthquake happened and so forth, but we did a lot of creative things in order still to make that successful. So I just wanted to recap on that component, what the guys were talking when you talk about the luxury component. Now, when we did Bandung, for instance, we sort of took it to another level in terms of mocking the six-star opportunity. And again, luxury brand, very specific for the domestic market. So we really knew what we did, and then we added the USPs, the white sandy beach and the rooftop bar where they hadn't done anything like that in Bandung. So there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. Now, when it comes to Indonesia, I suppose it's the best way of maybe explaining this is with a company like ours where a very Indonesian sentiment when it comes to development. So they're not, they're not the normal approach to even opening a hotel properly. So there's no pre-opening budget. Money is given as needed. There's a small petty cash flow just for monthly running costs. And there's a mandate that if the hotel isn't profitable within month number 3, then you failed as the head of that business unit. And because the company is so diversified with with banking, financial institution, entertainment, retail, including Transmart Khattarwong, which is a huge example of the original Transmart Khattarwong on Sunset Road. The modelling of goods in that supermarket or hypermarket changed simply because the market mix at that time changed when the China market hit Bali. So a lot of the goods that were predominantly European then changed into souvenirs, like honey soap and even fruits and all that. So the success of that hypermarket was the decision to build a new shopping mall not far from that site, including a theme park. So there were no market fundamentals. There was no, let's look at fair market conditions and let's look at reports. It was really, this is the type, yeah, that's right. These are the type of people that were coming and go ahead and do it. So I suppose what I'm saying, our company has a very unorthodox approach to doing business in Indonesia.
That's why it's so appealing, I think, in the end of the day. Can I have slides on? So this is the survey results. Basically the question, right? How, if the hotel investment is only as good as its local market. So 56% agreed, 19% strongly agreed. So the vast majority of respondents, confirmed that if the market fundamentals are not there, it will struggle. It will struggle. The next question is related to projections of demand. So let's assume we selected the market. We know where we're going. We're comfortable with market fundamentals. Now it's time to come up with numbers, right? Whether it will make sense to invest into that particular luxury asset. And if it's on the expense side, it's more or less straightforward because we know what we're doing. I hope so. But on the demand projection side, that's where the main question mark is, especially in the luxury segment and especially in the emerging market. And so looking at other segments, it's more straightforward because you might use a fair share approach, which basically means that if the new hotel enters the market, then it takes a proportionate share of existing demand from competing hotels. Now, that may not necessarily work that way in the luxury segment, and especially in emerging market. There are various reasons for that, but the question to you, how do you project your demand for a luxury product in emerging market, which is a very important question, right? Do you use fair share? If you don't, what do you use? How do you do it?
Okay.
Kieran?
If it's a unique location and obviously if we were the first or there wasn't another international operator for reference, we would typically take a regional comp set and look at how maybe other unique hotels in those destinations were performing, then take our historical trading numbers in that brand, and then obviously we wouldn't really go into a market with a luxury product if we don't have a Hilton or a DoubleTree in that market already operating, because that's the fundamental business to get that base business. So we would go into a market, as I mentioned, which was strategic, AAA location, with the luxury brands, because access is a huge thing too, because if you're in a remote location, the customers that are willing to spend the $1,000 per night are maybe not perhaps willing to transfer 4 times to get to that destination. It could take them 24 hours to get to that location. So for us, and that's, this is our corporate strategy, and obviously my competitors and everyone else has their own views on this, but we're very dedicated in being in these locations for that exact reason. So typically, if we are evaluating a luxury project, we would know what's in that market. We'd be able to see with our system contribution how we can push business into it. But as I mentioned, if it was an emerging market, hypothetically, and we did go, pioneering ways, we would take a comp set regionally, we'd look at what the comp set has done.
Similar fundamentals.
And then put it in together, yeah.
How do you do it?
Well, yes, we would look at comparable markets. Maybe we're a little bit more pioneering in our strategy and trying, particularly on the leisure side, going to new places. But for us, that decision and that discussion is really much more qualitative rather than it is quantitative. And in a couple of cases recently on deals that we've done, the pro forma doesn't really come up. So for us, it's really understanding first what is the location, what is special or unique about it, and then really understanding what the vision is of the developer and the partner. We would not go into a pioneering or emerging market with a partner who's first order of business and the thing that they're focused on is what is the pro forma, what is their rate of return. If it's someone who has usually there's a bigger picture that they're trying to accomplish. Usually there's an emotional connection with the destination or with the project, and then we want to make sure that that partner is someone who has the resources, and we have aligned vision that this may be a long-term play.
Yeah.
That they're resourced appropriately for that, and it's much more than just a business decision. Certainly, we would have to believe that based on what has happened in maybe comparable places and our own experience, positioning and helping to develop new markets, that we can make this a good business proposition. But it's more than just about achieving fair share and delivering.
It's sort of a legacy, right? Legacy, approach. Alex, I know you are embarking on some very exciting journey in a new market. So how is it going? How do you project your demand there?
Is this working? No. Yeah, look, we're really excited. We've got Surabaya coming up, and it makes it a bit easier, a little bit different to what Kieran and Noel are talking about. We, being a domestic player and having the opportunity to do mixed use developments, it makes it a little bit easier. So the decision to build a hotel combined with luxury apartment, combined with a retail shopping mall, and in Surabaya in particular, combined with what we call Snow World. So it's going to be the first ski village ever in Indonesia. It does make it a little bit easier to make that decision, even in an emerging market. And it was said earlier this morning that you wouldn't build a 5-star hotel in Surabaya at the moment, and that's true to a degree because the rates there are also very flat and it's very competitive, even with the 5-star segment. But in saying that, for us, we are very committed to building a international brand. An international 5-star brand. Now, at the moment, it is a domestic brand, but there's no reason that we can't gain the footprint and the experience and the reputation in order to probably take it somewhere like Singapore, for instance, right? Because, that was also spoken about this morning. You do an act, performance, and that's, again, we do theme parks because we believe, why should Indonesians go to Singapore, to the theme park when they can come here? Someone also spoke earlier about Disneyland in Indonesia, for instance. So there are many components that make it valuable. Now, for us, with the Surabaya project, it's an extremely dense project. I mean, you're talking 2 hectares, and you've got at least 5 high-rise towers, plus the shopping mall with the theme park. So you can imagine the volume of people that will come to that type of location. So it is very domestically driven. We know that there's not a big international market, and we're a domestic market, and we can advertise it on TV through a trade. So there's a lot of reasons why that can possibly work. But I was just speaking to Patrick, who's got the Golden Tulip in Surabaya at the moment, and this is a development feat in itself, because Surabaya has a very sandy soil texture. So the most that's ever been developed in that area is 2 levels of car park. We're going 4. So just to do the footings on this is going to take a year, and then it comes out of the ground, and it's a 2-year project at the end. But we're very optimistic, and again, we're looking at Manado. Makassar is an area we already have a shopping mall and a theme park, so we will continue to develop our brand there. So we're very optimistic, and I just do really agree that the question arose a little bit earlier about Jakarta. Is there space for another luxury hotel in Jakarta? And having had the opportunity of running the Mulia in Jakarta for 3 years, and knowing how challenging and competitive it is, that's something I think needs to be considered.
So I guess the takeaway is create more touch points and demand generators to make it work. And so let's look at the survey results. So fair share is not accurate in a luxury segment. 28% strongly agreed, 34% agreed, so vast majority actually agreed that it may not be used for a luxury segment in the emerging market, which basically means that it's more an art than a science. And so the next question is about demand generators for projections of demand. So we look at these factors. Brand recognition, not band recognition. Brand recognition among the key source markets, customers' loyalty, demand generators in close proximity to the hotel, unique product offering, and location. So I would ask each panelist to rank from most important to least important, and maybe you want to differentiate your answer between resorts and city hotels. Alex?
Yeah, well, I strongly disagree with what I can see there if you talk about leisure. So I think business, you have to separate business and leisure. So when it comes to business, there's no doubt location is a big key. The product itself, and then you go on to the rest of the categories. Is brand really that important? Because maybe your company is the one that's putting up there. So I think, but I think the one that's more interesting is leisure. And, look, I think we as a hotel, unknown brand coming into an international competitive market like Bali, building on Sunset Road, I had a lot of people that actually came up to me and said, "Oh, Alex, is there something wrong? Did you get demoted or something? What are you doing running a hotel on Sunset Road?" So that was the negative. And I honestly thought, even when I did the SWOT analysis, that location was probably our biggest weakness. But today it's our biggest strength. So you've got to be very careful how you analyse this specific type of data. So for me, I think when you talk about leisure, it goes back to what everyone's talking about at the moment, the guest experience, the level of engagement. And it's true, because some people think it's very difficult to have loyal customers for a resort, but much easier for a business hotel because it's convenient location and it's to the office and all that. So that, to me, is a little bit boring when it comes to the creativity side. So really, in terms of a resort, you've got to really look at it, in a very upside-down approach and say, okay, just use the Trans Resort Bali as an example. Every hotel on there was, 3-4 star. It wasn't going to be that successful. But, the again, and Lada, maybe the touch points are very important. But creating, a white sandy beach, creating a man-made waterfall, creating the mix of villas and suites and spacious guest rooms, all with spas and balconies. Having enough variances that could possibly compete with a beachfront hotel, because Seminyak is regarded as now one of the best locations in Bali. If you speak to the people in Flight Centre, they will say that the Australians' most sought location in Bali, it's no longer Nusa Dua or Jim, it is clearly Seminyak. So, you know, I mean, there's different ways how you probably can grade these specific points.
Yep. So unique product offering for a resort. Yeah. Paul, you're on a distribution side, so you see all products and basically you know how they're performing. So what are the key drivers in city hotels versus resorts?
Well, I think to answer this question correctly, that they're all important, but some are more important than others. And to Alex's point, that the leisure market will have a very different view of these points as opposed to the corporate market. So city hotels opposed to resort. We actually did some work for one of our brand partners a couple of years ago, and we did a survey of our membership and really asked what were the key drivers of why they were buying the product they were buying. And in essence, the number one driver of people's decision to go to the destination they purchased through us was a unique product offering. You know, that they really wanted to get that experience. So if, again, go back to my point about merchandising, if you can create a unique product offering at a resort, that will get people to buy into it. Then location and demand generators, close proximity to the hotel, always going to be important to fill the gap around the product in its own right. And then you would come into, okay, what brand am I loyal to? And then choose from that aspect. So leisure, to Alex's point, will think very differently about what are the key motivators to purchase a holiday destination and the product itself, and how you merchandise that will drive what they're going to do. From a hotel perspective, you could almost flip it on its head. From a city hotel, from a corporate market, that obviously that's where loyalty comes into play, location, and what the hotel's going to give them from a corporate aspect. So you'd reverse that around, and it was pretty stark in the survey we did that was literally 1 to 5, 5 to 1. So you know, I think that from a resort perspective, if you understand your product and you can offer it well, that's what's going to drive them to come through the door.
Noel, what's your ranking?
Yeah, luxury. I mean, I think it, starts with product. You can have everything. You have the brand awareness, the aspiration, but luxury fundamentally is an exceptional product. You don't have luxury if you don't have that. And I totally agree that it's about the product in resort locations. We opened our first hotel in Asia in Beijing 5 years ago, and it's interesting because the location, I would say, is inferior to the other traditional ultra-luxury hotels in the market. So we're a bit challenged in location, and it was our first hotel in Asia. Yet, within 3 years of opening, we were number one in the market. We're still number one in the market. 3/4 of our business is from within Asia. 60% of the business, more than 60%, is from within Greater China. So this is without any, brand awareness in source markets or loyalty, or traditional loyalty. What we did is we created an exceptional product, and our focus, our strategy really is to lead with food and beverage. So we have 6 of the best restaurants that to this day are still always booked. Locals go there. It's what everyone talks about. It's where everyone wants to be. So if the locals are there, then your travelers will want to be there. So it's about having the right product, but then the merchandising, promoting that and getting the word out is key. So that can work in certainly resort market, but also we find that is the case in city locations as well.
So everyone up for a unique product offering so far? Kieran?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with, certainly resorts and city hotels are two fundamental different target markets and the way we look at it. I mean, again, I'm a big believer in location. It's all about the location of the product. However, I mean, it was interesting. We do obviously a lot of studies. We have 95 million Hilton Honors members, and when we go out and research our customer base and we ask them, what's the number one thing you look for? Is it location? I mean, look, of course, location is one of them, but they said they would rather, if it's enabled to collect points, they would actually travel to our hotel to stay. So if I'm looking at that in a city hotel, location and brand recognition is probably the 2 top priorities for us. And of course, luxury, unique product offering, right? You have to have the product. I completely agree with Noel, but you need to also be able to deliver it too. Correct. And that's what, Simon said.
So let's see what the majority says. So city hotels, so the demand generators in close proximity to the hotel in the city hotel is a number 1 factor. Then location, and then you see the least important is loyalty, according to the majority of interviewed. And then resorts, location and unique product offering, the most important. And then again, customers' loyalty goes way after even brand recognition. So having said that, we are, I think it's a very good time to touch base on the customer's loyalty topic, because as we see, the actual interviewed and results of the survey show that the customer's loyalty is not that important, apparently. So it is subject to debate whether the customer's loyalty does exist, right? And whether it is contingent on existence of a members club loyalty points. Sometimes loyalty exists without any members points, and vice versa. There is no loyalty regardless of how big is the loyalty program. And so the importance of the loyalty, it has to be really differentiated from the brand recognition. It's really important, two very different things. The brand recognition is not to that extent, is not that deep in the mindset of the customer as the customer's loyalty. When we're talking about customer's loyalty, we mean that the brand can generate the latent demand. So basically, the demand is driven by the mere fact that the branded hotel appears in certain destinations. So that demand wasn't there in the first place, and is created by the fact that there's a brand coming into the market. And the second is the ability to generate repeat business by the mere fact of existence of that brand, or predominantly due to that existence of that brand. So the loyalty phenomenon is really rare in the hospitality, but it's really notable and it's really obvious in the luxury segment. There is a concept of frequency of touch points. If we're looking at big ticket items that we're spending on, which is cars, mobile phones, white goods, that's where the brand loyalty is actually working. And that's exactly the case in the luxury segment, the hospitality, and scientifically proven that loyalty actually works in luxury segment and hospitality. So when we're talking about resort destination, that's where particularly that is obvious. The people are willing to travel to destinations just because there is a brand that may not be necessarily, that was not necessarily there before. So the question to the panelists, assuming you do track your loyal customers and who they are, what is the profile of the customer, of the loyal customer, and what are the factors that cultivate the loyalty? Alex.
Yeah. Thanks, Lada, and I'll be really happy to answer this one. First of all, Bandung, right, the Trans-Luxury Hotel Bandung, has a huge following, but that's very domestic driven. So that's probably a little bit easier. It's 2 hours from Jakarta. It's a weekend destination, and then during the week it's MICE. So I think that's pretty straightforward. Getting into the international market, difficult destination. So for us to open the Trans Resort Bali was always going to be a challenge whether we could break through the international market. So, like anything, right, sometimes opening a new hotel, you got to sort of try a few different things to see what works, right? So, and that's sort of the motivation a little bit, because you really don't know exactly, how your market demographic is going to pan out. In our case, it was very clear now, we're 4.5 years old, 50% leisure, we are now 75% leisure and 25% MICE, but we're also 50% couples and 50% family. And the good thing about that is your question about whether we track return guests, we do. And I see JC and Ricky in the crowd, and I don't know if they do, but we've taken it seriously because we were surprised by the number of return guests in literally within year 2. We're now approaching year 5, and we honestly have guests coming back 5th, 6th, 7th stays. But more interesting, they're extending their length of stay. Now, that's the bit that really surprises me. So even if it was, for example, through Paul, a luxury escapes package, 8 nights, but now it's 10 nights, and now they're buying sometimes 2 vouchers, so they're extending, really up to about 16 room nights. So the way we track it is we're very much on the floor. So that sort of guest experience is a little bit different in our hotel because the vigilance of the general manager and the engagement level of the guests is predominantly what makes us different. And in doing so, that return patronage is so overwhelming that the guests really want to explain that to you. So we and myself particularly walk the floor. It's a small property, it's 200 rooms. walk the floor. I do 2 rounds every morning for breakfast, from about 7:30 to 10:30, an hour in between, but I capture pretty well most of the guests. One, I would like to capture a glitch if there is a problem and I can get that remedied straight away while they're still having breakfast. But secondly, it's really about understanding why are they coming back? And often it's because of the employees, this level of genuine engagement and the fact that it ticks all the boxes for them, whether that location that predominantly I thought was a weakness is actually positive, because you can go to Mamasan, you can go to Eat Street, you can get on the shuttle, you can go to all the beach clubs. So it is a great location. And then for children, it's very friendly. Then all the activities that we do, whether it's power walks or, whether we give pig donuts to the kids or whether we, give free marioshkas away, we do a lot of things that create the level of happiness towards that guest. So we measured it. If you look at our average between 400 to 500 guests a day, when I walk around the restaurant, I can easily see there's about 50 to 60 guests that are return guests. So that works out to a ratio of about 15% for us. Now, I wish there was a stat here in Bali that could sort of measure that, but I don't think there is. Because, it's funny with Bali, because it's whether you want to go to Nusa Dua or whether you want to go to Jimbaran, or, now Uluwatu is becoming a destination, as well as you saw last night with the Radisson Blu, etc. So it is really interesting to really drill down deeper. And I suppose for us, we're just delighted that if we take our full database of guests, we are now remarketing to them as well. But one of the success stories for us is that a lot of guests, because I am visual, I do give my business card, I do tell them to email me directly, they do, and it is sort of a little bit of a, I've sort of created a lot of work for myself. It's a little bit of a hassle, but the fact that I personally reply, and then, I'm creating myself, if I look at our FIT segment, we're about, we're probably about, in terms of OTA versus direct bookings, we're about 35, 25, and out of that FIT component, I'm generating myself about 5 billion a year just through bookings through my own office. So I think that personal touch, right from that very high level, right through the level of engagement with employees, of true, genuine hospitality, service, friendly, has a big impact.
That's an impressive number. What about you? Do you track your loyal customers?
Oh, yes, of course we do. We don't have a loyalty points program. I think it certainly works for mass market hotels. The difference in, for a $200, $100 customer, I think that maybe driven by points or a program. Our focus really more is building up a CRM, and we find that the customer who pays our kind of rate, is driven by product. If they can afford a luxury product, they're also willing to go a little bit out of their way. Luxury is always about being practical or being convenient. We 1/3 of our guests who stayed at Rosewood Hotel have stayed at another Rosewood Hotel. So we closely monitor that, and it's a really interesting phenomenon as we've grown in Asia. I mentioned earlier that we opened our first hotel here 5 years ago, and by the end of this year, we'll have 9 hotels in Asia. So to answer the question of what our loyal guest looks like, traditionally, up until a couple of years ago, it was older Americans. I mean, most of our market has been U.S. based. Older, certainly more affluent, gotten to a station in life where they can afford a nice vacation. Maybe they don't have kids, or they have grown kids. Now, because we have more distribution in Asia, we're seeing that our customers are a lot younger, and they travel with their kids. So whereas 10 years ago, if you do an ultra luxury resort, $1,000, $1,500 rate, you would see maybe a couple of kids, but it really wasn't kid focused. Now, because our affluent customer in Asia is younger, they're more family driven. They travel with their kids. So places where you wouldn't have expected to put kids amenities, that's something that we would do now, and that's a big change that we see in our loyal customer base.
Following the needs of your clients.
Sorry?
Following the needs of your clients.
Yes.
Redefining luxury.
Absolutely.
We'll be talking about that in a minute. What about Hilton?
Yeah, I mean, the customer continues to evolve and change their wants and needs, and obviously we have to anticipate those needs and continue to service that. But I mean, just from a high-level loyalty, I mean, obviously luxury to the rest of the state is very different. You know, we have 6,000 properties trading today. 60% of our base occupancy out of 6,000 properties do come from our loyalty members, and 95% of them book direct because they get a cheaper rate, because they know if they book through Hilton.com, they get a cheaper rate than any online travel agent. So we encourage, obviously, people to do that, and in turn, we actually save about $1 billion worth of distribution costs that would have gone to a third party, and that saves, in the end of the day, the owner's pocket. But I mean, drilling in, I can't give you an exact profile of the customer at the luxury level, but I think what we do is we try to improve the program so our luxury travelers and all our travelers, actually, in fact, are benefiting from the program. So they're able to redeem points in world-class destinations and resorts, but also we've teamed up with Amazon. You can actually use your Hilton Honors points and buy things on Amazon. You know, we set up private concerts with Live Nation to have VIP concerts, which is a very unique, special program, and you use your points to do that. And even we work with McLaren F1 team and, you know, set up a whole paddock club, hang out with the drivers. And these are experiences you can't buy as a normal person. So yes, you know, if you are staying with Hilton and in a Waldorf Astoria, you collect your points because you're paying a higher rate, and then you can redeem these points for more of a lifestyle, unique offering. So
yeah, you're going
we try
beyond.
to, yeah, exactly.
Going beyond. Okay, so I think that's the next point that we're going to touch base on is the luxury of tomorrow. What's the new black if we're looking 5 years from now? Paul, you're dealing with luxury on a daily basis. You've seen all sorts of luxury and how it developed in the last years. What's going to be luxury of tomorrow?
Oh, how long's a piece of string? There's so many opportunities out there. The consumer today is much more savvy. They're much more aware of what the world has to give, and they are looking for experiences that are going to fulfill an expectation. So I think luxury is going to evolve almost to be synonymous with the term experience. And if you can't deliver that, then you're going to get left behind. Evolution of, there's so many things going on in terms of artificial intelligence talked about this morning. I think luxury still is going to go back to about making sure the customer is serviced in a way that delivers a luxury standard. So I don't think that's going to change. You can't just throw out hospitality because technology allows you to be a bit more efficient with it. So I think in terms of, you know, creating a luxury brand and living to brand standards and brand execution is really going to be the mainstay of luxury. So there'll be new products coming in. You know, there's new cruise ships coming in, which are just phenomenal. Out of the way, location we talked about before, but luxury could necessarily, an emerging destination, get me out of the rat race and get me into somewhere nobody can talk to me, no Wi-Fi, and just sit back and relax and read a book. So luxury is going to be what you imagine it'll be. Who knows? Richard Branson, what you put in the round space, you know.
Silence therapy, right?
Yeah.
It's called silence therapy. Kieran, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think product, obviously, especially in luxury, is one of the most fundamental parts of delivering luxury because people are paying for the size of the room, the facilities of the hotel. But in the end of the day, we're people serving people, right? And especially when it comes to luxury, you really need to get that right. So you just touched on it. It's about creating memorable experiences. It's about being intuitive, about anticipating the need of the customer before they even come to us. So us surprising them with amenities or excursions or surprises for the family members. I mean, and this is all being able to we collect this data, right? You know, through the Hilton Honors app now, you can check in online, you can actually order stuff in advance. So we learn about the customer habits that way. And then as we continue to become more digitalized, we're actually launching Room Connect soon, where you'll be able to control every single function within your hotel room with the touch of your phone. So we'll learn everything, you know, the ideal temperature for a certain guest profile. When do they check in? When do they check out? How many times? You know, so we just have to come up with more ways to be intuitive and deliver the service.
Personalisation, really, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
And technology is really helpful there,
Yeah,
right? So
exactly.
investing into
We're
that
able
is
to learn a lot more that way.
Is a big part of your budget, I think, going forward. What about Rosewood?
Well, I certainly agree. It's about experiences. I think before it was about coming back from a vacation or from a stay at a luxury hotel, feeling indulged, pampered, well-fed, rested. You know, maybe being exposed to something a bit different. And there's always been a segment of travelers, of affluent travelers, who really want to learn something new and be exposed to a different culture, have an authentic experience. We find that just from the Chinese families, just having kids who are exposed to nature is something that can be quite transformative. It's something that's quite unique and different. So we that focus on experiences we expect to become more mainstream. And another aspect of that is in wellness. So of course all of our hotels have, resort hotels have spas, and we're seeing wellness move from being an experience that just a focus on having experiences that are massage and body treatments, but our customers want to come away being fulfilled, maybe learning more about becoming away a better person. So not just relaxed and massaged, but maybe coming away from one of our stays knowing how to eat better or live their life better. So in some of our resorts, we're launching a new wellness concept that includes wellness practitioners and specialists on how to live. And we see this actually is also creating ancillary demand during low seasons in some of our resort properties.
Wellness coaches.
Wellness practitioners,
detox
specialists
programs,
on nutrition, on life coaching, fitness as well. So coming away more, a better person, a better way to live is something that our customers want.
Okay. So I think we have.
I'll be really quick on that one because I agree with everything. Just one that I wanted to add. I'll be really quick. Number one, the guest is more demanding. So, you're going to be left behind if you don't think about that particular point. Number two, exactly what the guys are saying, this experience, genuine authenticity, customer satisfaction. But I think one that's missed out is the evolving concierge because, and it was said again this morning, the concierge data isn't really tracked. What questions are people asking? What information is the concierge giving? And I think this is an area that can really be improved, especially at the luxury end. And I think that you'll see over the years that the concierge will become some, because if you go into Bali Bible or you go into Google, it's an overflow of information. So this way, if you've really got these really trained, smart concierges that can really identify exactly what you need, that's going to be a big point. The second one is a little bit to the wellness. I call it sustainability, this whole adventure and the wellness and being a better person on the planet, all that sort of thing, combined with the eco-friendly system, because that's something that's so important to a lot of people. Even the millennials really are staying in hotels because no plastic and blah, blah, blah. And the last point, and I see Peter Fritz sitting in the thing, but is food focus. And I think that in the future what will happen, you will have these decadent sort of in-room dining experiences that will go on till 5 o'clock in the morning. I think you will see that the buffet transformation will be something so amazing that, the pillowy bread rolls out of the oven will be something that will inspire you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think CSR is also a very important point for all of us. Well, I think we don't have any time left, but our gentleman will be able to answer all your questions during the coffee break. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.